Hoyt. Unanimous. All right. So a little bit different agenda order tonight, both to mention that both for the board and for the audience. So we're going to move into our personnel. With that, I will make a motion to accept item D in its entirety. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on D? All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. And I will mention that we regretfully accept the resignation of Michelle Alanya as our Executive Director of Special Education, effective October 1st. So we wish her well in future endeavors. Can I get a motion to accept our consent agenda, item E, in its entirety?
Make the motion.
Motion by Mr. McCarthy, second by Mrs. Wood. Any discussion on E? I'll start the discussion just by mentioning I clarified with Mr. Colabufo on number 4, which is the approval of the transportation request. One, big call out to the whatever drivers are donating the time. That transportation request for the Western Road Fire Department training safety night. Bus drivers donate their time. We as a district are donating the use of the buses. But I think we did last year for over to make sure we, as a board, send thank you letters to the drivers and volunteers. That would be great. Any other discussion? There being none, can I get all those in favor? Thank you. Move into special presentations to the board, and I will have Mr. Colabufo introduce our presenter.
So it is not the first time that we've had Mike Vesby from Forecast 5 come and present. Mike's actually with the Forecast, the different branch of it, not 5cast, which works predominantly with Maureen and budgeting purposes, but he has been very gracious to be kind of the conduit to the 5 lab for us. So that's with the presentation. This refers to when we were having the conversation about data, and it was always kind of ongoing, unfinished business. So they did a lot of work with the dashboards, and Mike is here to present. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, so thanks for having me again. And yeah, so I just finished 31 transparency reports. Mike, we're going to give you the mic from all over, so that way recorded here.
Yeah. Otherwise, when
it won't be on.
our massive audience watches this back, they won't hear you.
All right. So appreciate coming back up. But yes, my primary responsibility is obviously I work with about 90 school districts on long-range financial planning. And as I mentioned, I just finished doing about 30 transparency reports, which was very challenging and very interesting. But yes, I'm here tonight to just kind of review our discussion in March, just kind of bring us back to where we were and kind of where we're headed. We have made a lot of progress. And I think one of the things that I'll say is Tom has been very patient in terms of the build-out. You were one of the, I think, first districts in the area to sign up. I think we've got about 5 or 6 districts around the state now. But I think it's this background that kind of brings us to where we are tonight. Tom was very proactive in his thinking in terms of how are we going to stay ahead of the national requirements in terms of ESSA. And ESSA essentially, a lot of folks in the financial world are just looking at the building level reporting, and it's about the funding and the money, and you'll hear more about that. But there's obviously a lot more behind the spending in terms of what's the reality is what's the return on investment, meaning what's going to happen with student achievement when we do have the funding. So it's kind of the connection between the two. So you're very much ahead of the game because now you have data that you can look at student achievement and you can couple it and make those decisions with the allocation of resources. So what have we actually done? We're trying to measure student success, and we're trying to take all of the data and look at the various factors that go into it, right? So we know that We have assessments, attendance, behavior. One of the big measures is in chronic absenteeism, right? And then we were here, when I was here last time, we talked about discipline incidents. There's a lot that's going into race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. So all of these factors that I think that were discussed in the past, you may have heard, are now all being brought in to the discussion with data, actual data. So here, last time we went live in the model and we looked at attendance, and we were stuck on that same attendance level until we had the data flowing. And now live in the model, your attendance data is being updated on a daily basis now. So that's something that each day the administrative team can take a look at and look and see what's going on with attendance. And again, it's not just attendance, but you can kind of pick apart who's part of the count for the attendance. So is there an issue with male versus female attendance, and you can break it down from there. So I have to be careful. I am going to go live back in the data at the end of the presentation. But behind all this is an administrative tool. It's really not meant for public presentation, because live in the data is you actually have student information. So I have it in a demo mode. So it kind of changes the names, and we can't get any trouble. But that's why I selected this time. Last time we were kind of a work in progress. This time everything's built out with live student data that's flowing from today. So I just want to make sure that I review that. So as well as there's some specific measures to your district. So Dibbles has been added. There's a dashboard. I'm actually going to show you the live dashboard. So now on your administrative team, you've got folks that can go through and break down this assessment data and by various subsets of data. We've loaded SAT scores, AP scores, and I know that we're going to further refine some of those categories so that you're looking at college and career readiness stats. So that's an indicator that you'll read about in terms of ESSA, because it's not just about your standard curriculum, it's what does it mean for the next step. So you'll hear college and career readiness, and the nice thing is your administration will define what does that mean. You know, what are the factors that are going to go into it. And we know that some of your advanced placement courses and your college connected courses will weigh heavily into that, that indicator. We spent a lot of time talking about this, and that's co-curricular activities. So we do have, so remember at the start of the project, we didn't have that data from the district in the student information system. So this is, again, just backing up a little bit, this is a conduit from your data and being able to organize it into a dashboard. So that data, after the last time I was here in March, that was put in the student information system, and then now it's downloaded into the dashboard. So now your administrative team has last year's data that they can now make a connection to. You know, connections such as if we've got students in this club, what does the rate of discipline look like? What does student achievement look like? What does attendance look like? So we're going to continue to make those dashboards so that your administrative team can draw conclusions from it and move in that direction. So I know a lot of you from the last presentation, were really interested in some of these connections.
Mike,
We talked a lot about behavior. Go ahead.
I have two questions. One related to absenteeism. The last presentation we talked about where students party, their mark is absent in the system. When they leave early, they're not marked as absent. Has there been any way to change that so that it's accurate in the system, or is it still if they show up 10 minutes late, miss attendance, they're absent?
That's on our part, and we're working. They should not be marked absent either way, if they're early dismissal or late arrival.
Okay.
It's only when they actually don't
Are absent.
get here, when they're supposed to get here, is when they're actually marked absent. So we're backtracking to be sure that we haven't,
Well, right. So
inadvertently.
an elementary student who doesn't have late arrival or early dismissal, if they get here 5 minutes late, they're marked as absent even though they were here for 90 minutes.
but it gets corrected.
It gets, okay.
Yes, it does get corrected
Okay.
by the attendance,
Okay.
building secretary or attendance person in the building.
And so that has to be,
It's not
corrected.
reflected there, that would be accurate,
it would be corrected in there.
right?
So my second question is related to the extracurriculars. We were talking before about, someone plays football and basketball, might be counting twice.
Yes.
Is that been correct?
So not only, so that's been corrected from, each category, but we were actually talking about the percentages. Right now, we've just got the athletics that are in there. We have yet to collect more data, and Tom, I don't know if you want to elaborate on
Yeah,
this.
yep, so I can jump in.
And I can show you the dashboard too.
Because we've been working with 5Lab every day about this. So there was just a massive upload. What you see right now is like the almost, what was it, 93% participation rate. Again, that's only middle school and high school because elementary, there's not the extracurricular. So what we just gave them, and now they're building that in, are all the clubs as well, like DECA, Change Club, all of those clubs that we have said, we've identified these, they meet throughout the year. It's not just like a one and done kind of thing. When that gets added on there, you're going to see it go up even more.
Right, but so my question is 93% or whatever it was on there, I can see it, but is that, person A, B, and C play two sports and they're counted twice and
No.
it's not, or are they only counted once?
So the 93% is a true 93% of the students in our population.
Participate in at least one, or?
That, I have to
Well-
say, I don't really know, but you can drill into
And-
each activity.
And when I drilled in, I noticed that it was, because I looked at somebody that was playing two sports, but it only had them as the one. So that's what I had said to them as we continue to clean it up. That's what we're looking for. It's looking at the total number of students, and I don't care the multiple sports, it's the one time.
Yeah, what it really should be is the total number of opportunities and events, and that's where the final percentage should be derived.
Right, it really should just be a yes or no, they participate.
That's right,
Or they
one
don't.
or,
They
right.
could participate. in
Well, that's
10, they
exactly
could
what it is.
participate
It
once,
says-
and should just be
It
one
says
check.
false or true,
Okay.
and it doesn't say how many, you know what I
Then
mean?
you can drill down within that. If
Yeah.
it's true, then
You go over to the guided analysis part and drill all the way right down to that student.
Yeah, and what's nice is, once the administrative team, now that everything's built out, phase one, phase two, and now the data's there, now you can assemble your administrative team, and the big question is, now what? So if that was a question that they had, the dashboard that's here are the same to in the financial software suite that I work with, so I'm very familiar with the software. You can turn on a filter, and you can filter out one or more, two or more, three or more, and have that criteria. In fact, one of the higher level things that I'm going to show, that's what we're doing. Now we're matching the data up, where we're working on freshman on track dashboard, because we know it's critical that freshmen succeed. Right? So we want to establish the criteria. At Forecast 5, we don't establish the criteria. We turn it over to the administrative team. We supply the data, they make the decisions. So, I'll show you that dashboard when we get live in there in terms of, we want to keep track of if they're failing 2 or more classes, if there's a suspension indicator, and if we've got chronic absenteeism, then we know that's probably not a freshman on track. So those are the types of indicators. So in terms of focusing your efforts as an administrative team, you're going to focus your efforts when you see those trends with those particular students, and you're going to develop programs and some of the things.
And
that
that's
we
the
talked
best
about
way to
last
track
time.
the cohort, to really kind of defeat the whole dropout rate, is to see where they are and how many credits they need to have by the end of that year. Then you're going to look at a chart with that cohort now become sophomores, and you're going to be like, okay, that's where those counselors now have to then go in and target, because these 18 students right here, if they're staying where they're at, they're definitely not going to graduate on time.
Yeah, so this is an example with a guided analysis to identify support. So this is just pass-fail rate. So I showed a little bit of this last time I was here, but this is all fully built out as well. And now the notion is, are we going to update this at the 5-week mark or just at the semester? So again, that's a district decision. But now that we've got the connection and the data's flowing, those are easy decisions to make.
And so since you brought that up, so there's connections that are feeding the data. So is there a reason that we wouldn't, like 5 weeks ago, why aren't we doing it more frequently? Or is it an infrastructure issue? Or?
No, a lot of the data is live every day, like attendance data is live every day, and discipline data stays live every day. But then there's some that we have to actually load every time
Gotcha.
that it occurs, like end of a marking period is an occurrence.
Right.
So,
So if we were to have a scenario like that, where you have, say, half of it is a daily feed, is it noted on there when the last update was?
Yeah, so the FICAST advisor, the person that, that's in my role, that's assigned specifically to your district, would note that in a timeline. And then then it gets taken care of from there. So that's a critical conversation to have. Whereas prior, in March, we didn't even have that API set up. Now we have, and that's been the toughest piece, is just to get all the pieces to the puzzle in place. And, that's why Tom wanted me to come back out. I would have liked to have been, truthfully back out in June, probably not a good time to come, but it's taken this long really to get it together and flowing. And that's why we're in the next step mode, which is to continue to look at what other data points the district administrative team wants in here, right? And especially with this notion of college and career readiness. So we've got to look at the data that we have, right? And then make decisions about what are the criteria that are going to go into that comparison as it relates to ESSA. So that's really, I think, in terms of the CAN presentation, those are probably the important pieces to it. So just kind of switching gears here, I want to be respectful of presentation time.
You can take all the time you want.
But we're back in the Phi Lab. As I said, these are the dashboards that you have for maybe some of the newer board members that haven't seen it. So this is what's been updated. You can see a number of, you can see I'm in demo mode, so in terms of student privacy, we're fine. But again, this is an administrative tool, so this is a little bit challenging to do in a public session.
So Mike, based on that, a couple questions. One, in the past, I thought we had talked about it. Is there not going to be, I call it the non-educator login? Or is the system supposed to work where administration does it and then they export reports for non-educators?
That's exactly right, yeah. This tool specifically is, just like a student information, it's an extension of a student information system. But what it does is it takes multiple data points and you can do the comparisons. So you can see, you have these filters right here, and any of those filters, you can click that and see the list of filters that you can filter by. So if you think about any of those factors we talked about, they're all there. So this very much is an administrative tool where the board would expect the administration to make the connections and then report back out to the board. Great question. So you can see there's the activities dashboard. So right now you can see the percentage at 92.92%, over 2,000 students. And again, click on for student list, you can see student list up there. So I'm going to just, be cautious here. But you can see the activity participation, the participation rate by school, etc. So again, the administrators can use this as a tool to not just look at the activity, because that's just one list. But now we're going to look at the activity, and now we're going to profile the rest of the students that are in the activities and to see how that corresponds to student achievement, how it impacts their attendance, et cetera, et cetera.
So just to clarify, I'm just reading the dashboard right now. It says activity participation is defined as the count of students participating in any activities. The student is counted for each activity in which they participate. So does that mean if we have 100 students and 50 are on the football team and 25 are on the basketball team, it tells us it's a 75% participation rate? Or even if some of those guys overlap and it's really only like 60%?
I would find it hard to believe that 93% of our student population participates in a sport or a club. That's where I'm confused.
Well, and that definition is making me think that that kid that plays basketball and football is getting counted as two instead of only being counted as one student participating in an activity.
So that's a conversation that I need to follow back up, Lorraine, because when I talked to Adam, who's our point person that he's referring to, I was very clear and I had said, again, just stick with the high school and the middle school, but what I had said was I don't want to count multiple times. So I get where he was trying to tell me, but there's value in seeing if kids that are playing multiple sports. I wanted to just see have them count once. I see that as well.
But I don't know if that's just poorly worded either. It could be that they're only counted once and that's just poorly worded.
Well,
So I want to clarify that because 93% is a high number for me and that's good, but if it's really 46% and there's multiple athletes that play
Sure.
3 sports, then that's not accurate reflection of our participation rate.
I mean, I just scrolled down to a participation rate by grade, and it's in an activity and not in an activity. So once,
The not in an
Once-
activity should be.
right, once music was added and band, then these percentages went sky, yeah, they skyrocketed.
It was
So-
63% before music and band got added.
So again, I mean, I think for the purpose of tonight, it's an over, the administration's gonna use it. We will, you know, obviously we can get to the definition in terms of what's here, you know, to get to the answer. If that's an answer that you want, you'll get to the answer, I think eventually, just based on the filtering.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can get back to you then.
Yeah, because I think, for my position, the big part about it is what's next. So, you know, what drew me is to the behavior screen. If this is a true reflection of behaviors within the school, I hope that it is that freshmen account for 1,027 incidents, where 12th grade is 229. So the data would show that if you need to pay attention to the freshmen, because they're the ones who are getting in trouble all the while, right? So you would, as an administration, you would use that data to say, we need to focus our attention on the freshmen to get that down, because in the 8th grade, they had 562, and almost doubled when they went to the 9th grade. So that's the data. So the focus might not be, you know, well, we're spending all the time on discipline on our seniors when they're almost at 4th grade level. But
You're right.
But you know,
Yep.
to me, that's been my point all along with this, is that now you could do something with the dean of students and the counselors and to focus on 8th grade. Why the jump? Your gut feeling might be, well, it's a lot more pressure. It's high school, they're trying to act out, they're 15-year-olds, whatever the answer is. But the data proves out that your biggest problem is with your freshman class.
It's true, and it's also forcing us, and it's a good thing, to really look at our procedures. So the norm in Central Square would be when a student gets a referral, they would put them all down on there. So it would be like insubordination because they're not following the rules, insubordination across the board. Then it would be like 6 other things that I guess you could say, but what was that primary reason that got the person? So now what we're focusing now is to say, when you're giving someone a write-up, this isn't a superintendent hearing where you have each charge. What is that primary reason? Because if you keep putting 6 things down, we're not then able to go in and look at the data and say, oh, this is what we need to target. So it's getting us to look at how we're doing things in general. And I'm really excited to see when they get DECA and all those things down there, so then we can actually say, a student participates in DECA. I mean, anecdotally, I know right now, because I've been looking at their GPAs, I look at their attendance, but it's going to be able to have that conversation with a parent in middle school, DECA, or playing a band in the band. This is the average attendance, you know, discipline, and GPA. You're not just saying, hey, your kid's going to be more successful if they play a sport, or they're connected to a club, and here's the data, little profile.
And here's really where you want to go in terms of that. So you may define that. So you may talk about, the administrative team may talk about, freshmen on track is going to measure how many freshmen are actively participating in a club. So we're still very much at just loading raw data that you have, which doesn't, you know, it doesn't do a lot. You're right. The higher level piece of this is if we add the indicator freshmen on track, right? Student has failed, student has identified chronic absenteeism, student has 1 or more suspension, and we add another criteria that says, does the student participate, yes or no, in an you know, extra classroom activity? Now you're taking something off of, you know, instead of just looking at it from a list, you're taking an indicator and you're recommending a course of action or a plan. So there's that connection. So that's where, you know, the last time I was here, something like this wasn't built out. Now you're starting to go down the path. And really the next step is to then now rally the administrative team, get them trained on how to use this, and then figure out what are the criteria. So this is probably going to be one of the bigger areas that you'll look at for that purpose. And now this information's, you know, here for the administrators.
Mike, when they do that, you're talking about, you know, getting them up to speed and trained and everything. Who is you don't have to name them, but do you have a best in class? Like in my company, if we were going to go show the software, I bring them into customer X to see it in practice. Who's best in class in Central New York?
Yeah, so Adam from our company, who's recently taken over the whole division, was a former administrator. So like me, he has the same understanding, comes from that side of the operation. So the person that's been building your dashboards was a dean of students at the high school.
No, I mean, what district out there is? For
comparison for
data
district?
is great, but what are they doing with it? Like, who is leveraging it and like making impacts to?
The one you showed
They're,
me.
they're national, yeah, so we're in 27 states. So right now, I think I've demoed at least 4 different states. There's a district in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
There's 2 in Illinois that are using this to actually tie their strategic plan. So, we're taking steps, but the Wisconsin, I show that a lot now. The Wisconsin document is the career and college readiness. The issue is they're tracking that data. So it's everything from community service to AP scores. So they're tracking that data. So they came up with a set criteria. So there's some other states that are, a little further ahead in terms of the implementation of ESSA. So, but yeah, so those are, I thought you meant staffing and personnel.
Yeah.
No, obviously we're gonna have someone come here and do the training. So that's what I was talking about. But yeah, what's nice is when you're looking at this from a national perspective, we can look at best practices in other states and bring them into New York. So we do have the SAT, PSAT, that's been loaded. So this is new. Again, I'm just kind of doing a demo so that you know what's in here. So now you can start making some connections there. And again, you can filter. If you've got this data in here, you can filter this data over any of those other indicators. So you can connect this data now. All of this is connected by the student information system ID for each student you have. So now you can make different connections because the data is loaded. The whole battle is getting the data loaded, getting it tracked and getting it loaded. And once it's in there, now you can start to make those higher level connections. So that's new from the last time that I was here. I know there's the star reading, but I just wanted to show you, this is something that's going to be very important as ESSA moves on and what your requirements are, where you're going to look at the makeup of students across the district. So this is something that I think I was hovering. So this is something that you're going to have to look at, is the school type, the population, and then of course, eventually when every district has to report the building level financial information, this is all going to tie together. And the biggest question is, why are you spending X versus Y at each school? And then what is the makeup of each school? So there's going to be one of these
And this
reports.
is that's actually our second year now doing that. It was Austin Fulton first.
Right. So you've got district, school building, grade level. So you also have 5 Site that has a story that goes along with it and breaks it down. So it takes that demographic information and it breaks it down by each building. That's going to be really important to tell your district story when you look at the funding report piece of it that's going to come out eventually. So in terms of guided analysis, remember those dashboards were just reports essentially. These you can actually drill into. So you could drill into and figure out what is the 92% accounting. So that's been completely built out now. We had talked about I kind of showed you before, so I apologize to the new board members, but on each one of these dashlets, you can drill into it all the way down to the student level. So on this freshman on track, under the guided analysis, the administrative team can click on any of these categories and continue to drill right down till they get to the student level and student list. So that's the difference with a dashboard's more of a report. The guided analysis is where these are interactive and you can keep clicking on them until you get to where you want to be.
For my clarification, freshmen on track, and then
and you go to your far right-hand side over there, where the blue highlights, blue letters are. Freshman on-track indicators, and each one of those three indicators is a negative. So explain to me what freshman on-track means in relation to three negatives.
So
Freshman
the-
on track.
Yeah, the terminology is on track or not on track. So that's what it looks at both. So if they're not on track, then they're pulled off. So you can change that, yeah. So you can flip that to freshman on track versus
Okay, so
not on track.
basically your
Yeah.
negatives are what pulling them off
Yeah, it's a
track.
true false.
Technically not on track if they've done any one of those three things.
Yeah,
So is a freshman not on track?
It's a matter of semantics.
it really is. You can set it up either way to look at it. So I think they set it up from the positive standpoint, more or less. That's what we've seen districts do. Yeah. But again, the idea is just as far as an update goes. The last time I was here, we had a single launch. We had phase one, 4 or 5 dashboards, 3 or 4 guided analysis. The rest of it's built out now. And now that, the next phase of the project, if you will, the work, is really, it goes into the administrative hands to figure out and refine what are the things that they're the higher level connections that they're gonna make, as far as student achievement. And really, that was the last thing, Tom had wanted me to kind of touch on. Hopefully it hasn't logged me out here. But I just pulled this up. See if it's gonna log me out. But, this is just, we can break down your testing, 3 through 8 testing, your region scores, they're all here. And I had just pulled this up with economically disadvantaged versus not. And right away, you can see the category on the left, right? In each of these indicators, this is economically disadvantaged versus not. And you can very quickly see a trend.
Which is
So-
why we were on the ESSA plan for our middle school.
Correct. So these are so when you look at like the big picture about how to use this data, and really it's, you can flash it up, you can compare. I mean, I could pull a comparison up right now and compare you to every other school in the county, just like that. The idea is to look at the data, analyze it, but just like we talked a lot about last time is, what are you going to do with it and what's the next step? So I think that's where you're positioned now, because everybody has access to publicly available information. Now you have that same publicly available information live connected to your student information system, and now you can make those decisions. The administrative team can make those decisions and connections and figure out what they want to track. So that's really, I think in terms of our time, it's a really good place to end it, and then obviously take any more questions. But the next report you get really should be, from the administrative team after they've been trained and after they've refined some of these criteria in terms of, okay, so you have these connections, you have the data. Now, what's the part of the action plan that we're putting in place? What specific areas are we addressing? And then we're going to be the software and support mechanism to put that data together in a meaningful way.
So I'll start with 3 questions that they're kind of directed at you, Mike, but probably to Tom and staff as well, which is, first, just on the timing. So what is the timing and who is the audience for training? I'm assuming it's all building administrators, district office staff, guidance counselors, sorry.
We haven't talked about counselors yet. We've talked about first the administrators, building level.
We talk about building level and district level administrators, but yes, I mean, the counselors need to be able to go in and to look, because if they're having conversations with students every single day about different pathways, they need to be able to see the patterns that are developing as well. So yes.
So what's or is there a time frame for training? And because to me, it's, you have the training, but then they just need some time to do kind of validation testing, and how do we extract the juice out of this? How do we squeeze it and get what we need?
Well, and what's nice about that is, because we work with so many districts, we can continue to supply those ideas and, as far as new things that are going. But the initial training, this is pretty interactive in terms of the initial training. So I don't, the training and the software itself is one area. The bigger discussion is what are the factors and indicators. And now that I think, this is a menu. So now that you can go and look at the menu, I think as an administrative team, now you can look at it, see what's there, and then try to make connections. So it's very difficult to do that on a webinar or a demo, until you have it built out. So I just sat with a large district, their administrative team, representing at the building level, district office level, special education, and that's exactly the conversation we had. And it's, here's a menu, here's a sample, kind of narrow that down, and then figure out where you want to go from there. So I think that's really the next logical step. And then these, as you know from the previous each one of these dash lists, they can each be modified. We've just put, this is what it looks like because it's a best practice, but each one of these can be modified depending on where people want to go next.
And is this something that's logged into individually, or everyone that logs in gets the same dashboard?
So when the programmers put this together, they knew that the superintendent would want one level of access. You may have a district office administrator have another level. You may have a building have another level. So there is layers that are built in. So it's really up to the district's data team to make those decisions.
Okay, I'm not sure if I was clear. What I mean is, you said it can be modified. You can change what information is available on that dashboard. If Tom goes on and adjusts it and says, I don't need to see what the indicators are on this dashboard. I want to do, does that then in Arenas, hers has the indicators still, or hers everybody's looks exactly the same, or can they modify it and kind of individualize their dashboard to see what they think is important?
Yeah, there's a different save. There's a save as, so there's a scenario, if you will. So there's different levels. So you can customize it depending on the level of licensing. That's a great question.
So like a user profile limits you from affecting other people's view?
Yeah, and it's locked out too. And that's a safeguard with any of the modules that we have actually. So if you had a license and created a peer group to compare, Central Square to 10 other school districts, you had another user in that they can have a separate comparison group. So it's not the same, it doesn't do an override. So it's a great question. Any other questions? So I really commend you. You've got, I think you're being very proactive. You're out in front of a lot of districts in terms of the conversation. And I think you'll be well prepared and well positioned, especially when the financial piece of this catches up. So I think you're in really good shape in terms of that. So it's been amazing to work with Tom. He's been very patient. But again, I'm looking forward to getting this, the next phases of the project. The data collection and organization of the data, it has taken some time, and we've learned some lessons along the way too. So especially in our data collection and partnership. But it's the beginning of the school year, and I think we've got a functional program ready to go for you. Thanks. Any other questions?
Thanks, Mark.
So just to wrap up for the board, I don't know what the board's feeling is, but we've had the data quote discussion on unfinished business. I want to take it off only in that this is rolling as far as our administrative team has access to it. I would think maybe in the next meeting or two, though, if we ask Tom and staff to come back, we could get bogged down in data to the nth degree, right? And that's not necessarily our role. So I think whatever time frame they need to come back and say, here's what we want to do with it, present to you guys, and that way we just validate that. Does that sound good to everyone? So time frame of by end of October for Habitat. Doesn't mean you have to give us a full debrief, because that training could take 30 days. I don't know what it is, but just give us an idea of what you want to do with it for the remainder of the year.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. All right, So we'll go into item G, which is reports unfinished business. Pearl, I'm happy to say you can take the data discussion off. We'll move in, open it up first to our Vice President. Anything to report? All right. I have a mini laundry list, and we'll open up to the board meeting real quick. One, just let the board know, Tom is going to send us his, in fact, I think he may already have done it just before the meeting, but his goals for this school year. We need to take the time to look through those before the next meeting and digest them, because we have to spend the time at the next meeting to identify what we as a board can do to help him accomplish those district goals, just like we did last year. So that'll be a chunk of time at the next board meeting on September 23rd.
When you look at the email that I sent you guys earlier today before the meeting, if you're wondering, when I stood up here and I talked about the 1, 2, 3-year goals, and we talked about that's all, that was instructional, and that's goal number 1. So when you see that, you're going to see exactly what we talked about before for instructional goals down there.
Thank you. Let's see. Pearl, I had asked, and just let the board know, so on October 21st, our presentation or our kind of discussion that night will be around our annual draft resolutions for New York State School Board Convention. Once those come out, we'll get them out to everyone so that we can direct our voting delegate how to vote on those resolutions at the convention in Rochester. I had mentioned Tom earlier today, but I don't know if you have anything, which is fine, we can do it. I read an article in the NISBA thing about how basically for CSE meetings now there's been a court ruling that parents are allowed to use FMLA, and I just know that's something that we can make sure parents are aware of. I would think for a lot of families that would be, they make hopefully attendance easier and a higher percentage of them able to make it.
Absolutely.
So I guess the question, are we or are we looking to?
Yeah, no, I haven't made that announcement yet to parents. Dr. Collins was just in here, and I don't believe she has made that announcement yet. But we will absolutely inform parents that they can use their own, wherever they work, FMLA, to go to those credits.
Thank you. For the board, we spent an exciting time this evening, Maureen and Tom and Pearl and I, with Ted, I forget the last name. Whatever. Trespass, doing the bond. So we approved the bus bonds a while back, but then we have to do this whole thing and sign them and everything. But the really good news is, I think what Ted said was, it's the lowest rate he's seen of any district get. So because we've done a good job as a district with our fund balances, it has allowed us to get a much better interest rate on those bonds, and it's the lowest one he's seen. So kudos to all involved, particularly Maureen, because it was a good rate, she claimed it as her rate. So that was good. That's right, it's the Maureen rate. When it goes up, we will remind you.
Yeah, it's a top rate.
And then just a couple of kudos. Number one, I heard just fantastic things. Unfortunately, I was not able to make the opening day with the teachers due to some work obligations, but I heard some rave reviews, not only about the day itself, but then as a follow-up to that, the 101 training, just really good things. So hopefully everyone else heard the same stuff. And then I'm specifically going to call out Miss Galvan, because being at different events at the opening of school, you all do an amazing job. I'll take time throughout the year to call you out, but Connie the other night at the football game, if you don't get the chance to watch her interact with students one-on-one, it is absolutely amazing. Like, you have a rapport with students that is almost beyond belief. So it was really great to watch, and I'm not, like, that's not blowing smoke. It was really cool. So congratulations. Well deserved. And then the last thing I have is I think I mentioned this last time, but with the board's approval, the Oswego County School Board Association has been trying for a month and a half to get our local area Region 5 regions to respond, to simply see if we can set something up for them to actually do their job and represent us. They have not responded. So I'd like to send a nasty gram on Board of Education letterhead expressing our displeasure at their unwillingness to participate in our process. So any objections to that? I'll send it to you all draft ahead of time before it's good, but it's not, we won't vote it on or anything. I'll send it to you. If you have objections, you can let me know through email. And that is it for me. So with that, I'm going to open it up and start with our student board rep, Mr. Foster.
All right, hello everybody. So I just want to bring one idea to you today. Down in the elementary schools, we have Big Brother, Big Sister programs. The high school volunteers don't just help these kids with their homework, they're also a mentor. This system is lost as the kids get older. Most of the troublemakers that I know of, the kids who abuse drugs, alcohol, fight, jewel, are usually the ones without the best home life. Maybe missing a parental figure or someone who doesn't show much support for their success. As opposed to just giving these kids the detention they're so familiar with and okay with, why not give them another mentor? Reaching out in the local community, I'm sure we could find parents, grandparents to come talk to these kids. In time, I believe these kids will benefit from having another mentor to talk to. Hopefully discussing goals and changing their mindsets and attitudes. I know this would be no small task, but I just wanted to put the idea out there and show it for you all to hear. I think these kids could really benefit from this, and I know that everybody's mindset is different. I know a couple kids that if you suspended them, they would say, wow, I just got a week off of school. That's amazing. If I got suspended, I would cry. It would be on my record. It would show in colleges. It would ruin my future. But that's just because of everything that my parents have shown me and the mentors that I had. I got in trouble one time in elementary school, and I weed whacked the whole lawn. We have mowers, but I had to weed whack for 3 hours. It's the punishment, it's the discipline. And I think that these mentors, maybe they can't make them weed whack, but they can sure speak their mind. So as opposed to just throwing them into a classroom and making them wait, do nothing for an hour, because they're not going to do their homework, have them talk to someone, and maybe they can change their mind.
I had an excellent idea when Theo Burtis sat in your seat. He talked about the mental illness, and he talked about situations that his peers struggled with. As a result of that, things that the board had talked about, that was Mrs. DiBianco's position, Director of Student Support Service Intervention. So it's that kind of thinking right there that we want you to keep bringing to the table. Absolutely.
So you're asking for something like a Big Brother, Big Sister for high school kids then, correct?
Absolutely. I think that if we implement it into the middle school and we keep going through the high school, that I think these kids would benefit greatly. Okay.
So this is one of those awkward things because I'm not putting on top of it. But no, so what can next steps be? Because obviously we don't want you to bring something up. It's not that everything we bring up gets acted on and maybe something can happen, maybe not. But can we just put it on unfinished business?
So they can replace data.
Exactly. No, obviously it's not at the next meeting, but it's just so that we don't forget about it. And then if something will come of it, though, whatever comes of it, then we can get an update on it down the road. So Pearl, can you add that on? I guess we'll call it a secondary Big Brother, Big Sister idea. I'll let you word it better than that. Thanks, Logan. Fantastic. All right, moving up to the rest of the board. Any topics or things that you would want to bring up at this point?
I just want to say, I went to the DSM field day show this past weekend, Central Square Kids first, and they did a fabulous job. When they had no community shows, as you guys know, because of all of our wonderful little rainstorms, but they did an excellent job, and I would really like to know that. And you can come this Saturday to CNS if you would like.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? All right, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Colabufo for the superintendent's report.
Okay, here we go. So the following have earned a seat in NISMA Conference All-State Ensemble based on their NISMA solo performance this past May. They will be traveling to Rochester Convention Center in early December to rehearse and perform with peers from the state of New York who also earned a seat. They will have the opportunity to sit under the direction of some of the greatest composers and conductors in the country. Jessica George's Conference All-State Wind Ensemble. I also want to give her a shout out. She did an amazing job with the national anthem that she had sung on back to school for our staff. Claire Ames, Alternate for the Conference of All-State Band, Hannah Sidewalski, somewhere, Mr. Buddy, or Mr. Bedworth is impressed that I got that. Conference All-State Mixed Chorus, great job to all. First day of school, it went great, and when I say that, for the first day of school, there are a lot of different factors that come into it. I had a great conversation with a couple parents that called me in my capacity now at the elementary. And once I said to them, because they were like, you know, why can't we just have bus drivers stay with the same route the whole time? And then I explained that there's a bidding process. When I explained all that, then they understood. But they were very impressed that when they got a hold of head of transportation, how quick, when they called him, how quick he was able to call them back. First day in any district, there are issues. What I'm very excited about is Blackboard that Arena helped bring into the district, how quick we're going to be able to get access to parents based on just the bus, that the message will go just to the kids that are on that bus, and the bus is being delayed such and such amount of time. So it's just that immediacy is what we're looking for. I thought it was pretty great. Just want to give Pearl a massive shout out. She is down there. There is a small stipend. Probably wasn't enough. So what I've seen in the first week, it is remarkable how she has taken on that role as building secretary, but also maintaining, being my clerical as well as the board clerk. She's done a wonderful job. We're still working out kinks. Pro runs to the bathroom. I'm on the buzzer asking people why they're coming in. So nothing has dropped the ball there. We're very excited about it. And I gotta be honest, selfishly, I was elementary principal for 4 years, getting into those classrooms. I'm still at the high school, but I love that admin part. And Erin has been awesome coming down when I have to come to high school. She's filled in. Red Hawk Regiment took first place last weekend with a score of 67.950 at ESM Field Band Show. ESM did very well as well, but they finished third. All right. The football team had their first victory on Friday Night Lights. It was phenomenal. The score, I may be getting this from 48-13. I believe, yeah. It was wonderful. It was a Friday Night Light game, so we're still working out some of the kinks when they go to the live to the students and why and asking them questions. But it's a work in progress. We have amazing students and they have good hearts, and from time to time we have learning experiences, and it's really good. They're good kids. So that was wonderful, great victory, and I will say our football coach and those assistant coaches, they are doing a phenomenal job. But not just football. I had the opportunity to go and watch all of our sports and our amazing band that you got to hear today perform all summer long, and the work that those students and those instructors put on is really second to none. And I am thrilled when we see that finished auditorium. As I've said it always, I truly believe we have one of the finest fine arts programs in any district that I've ever worked at and that I know of. And we're going to be able to truly showcase that. I gotta say this. So I had the opportunity to do something to face a fear of mine. I'm definitely afraid of heights. Literally getting on a 6-foot ladder, I'm definitely afraid of that too. So Mr. Bowden has been asking me, because he's the principal of our elementary building, he's asked me to come fly the district. He is part of a aviation club called Signature Aviation, and that allows him to be able to take a plane that's there and fly around. And so he kept asking me, and I will be honest, because my wife sometimes watches these. I always said no, but she said if Mr. Laye rides, just in case something happens to Mr. Bowden, he'll be able to take the helm. So I've got some great footage of Mr. Bowden in the front, sitting next to him is Mr. Laye. And the cool part about that is we talked about different pathways and some in the military pathway. And I got to tell you, it's just really a good thing that I never was in the military, because when the tower would say there's a helicopter at 1 o'clock, I literally had to look at my watch to see where the angle would that come from. But Laye had already seen the helicopter like 2 miles away that I didn't know what they were looking at. So I couldn't see it. They had the ability. It's just amazing. So I got to fly around the whole district, and where I have a whole new perspective, especially in calling the snow days. Just literally when you get up 2,000 feet to see the lakes, the locations, and why like coal gets pounded when it comes across. It gave me a whole new perspective. it also let me know just the amazing work that our maintenance crew does, because even from 2,000 feet, Mr. Bowden dropped it down to about 1,000 feet in like a second, which I almost threw up, but it was very impressive, and just to see how nice our buildings look from up there. Got to fly above Mr. Vaillier's house, it was pretty cool, yeah, it was in my house as well, so it was very, very impressive. I just wanted to give Mr. Bowden a shout out. If anyone else is interested in something like that, he loves taking people that have never been up in flames. I've got some great footage of that I've been tweeting out and getting great responses. I also want to give another shout out. I've been getting a lot of great feedback from teachers saying that was amazing, the Armored One. That was on the 4th. On the 3rd, at the back to school, I said, okay, so here's the deal. This is going to be very intense. If you're suffering from certain ailments, you can go at your own pace. Or if you're have a really bad physical situation, or something with mental stress of being in a situation you can sit that out. We only had 3 people choose to sit that out, and the feedback I got from everybody there was extremely powerful. So that was really good. Yeah, no, that's pretty much all I have, and I'm very excited at the end of this for you to have the opportunity, if the board, if you want to come along. Mr. Paul Brissett is here to show the tour of what's been done so far, which is pretty amazing at Miller Hawk and here at Paulding Warren.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Colabufo.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Since he was doing sports shout-outs, we do have the coaches here. Our cross-country boys and girls had their first invitational this weekend. The boys brought home a second-place trophy, and the girls brought home a third-place trophy, so kudos. Coaches and the kids.
That's awesome. I apologize, Hansons. I did not see you over.
I know, I'm short.
I'm short too, so I couldn't see you over.
It's all good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colabufo. I went out of order and I apologize, but nothing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. You don't. I was going to say you just don't. You're giving me grace for going out of order. Miss Vanessa Haskins, as we mentioned at our last meeting, we invited her to provide an update on whatever she would like from the city board perspective. So the floor is yours.
So I'm going to try to focus on one thing and then just give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions about anything else that I've done in my time. August 21st, we had our board meeting / annual retreat, and we were going over board goals, and we quickly got stuck on the first one. So I'm going to read it to you real quick and then lead into the conversation that came from there. Examining existing CTE and alternative ed programming and make adjustments as needed. This will include the removal of significant alterations to programs that don't suit regional needs, and it will be driven by data. So after we got to talking a little bit more in depth, Roseanne Bain, Assistant Superintendent, spoke to specifically cosmetology, and it started leading into the regret that we're not seeing the students have access to jobs that are well-paid and in this region when they leave school. She spoke to about 30% of the students that were putting through that program actually go on to even take the test. And of that 30%, we're not even sure how many actually pass. And went on to speak more specifically that this is a female-dominated classroom setting. Certainly there are some gentlemen that do attend, but not very many. After speaking to that, she spoke about childhood education program that we have out there where students can leave and have certification, where they can be a teaching assistant in a preschool classroom. And again, this is not high demand, it's not free pay, it's not readily available in this region for these students, while they can further their education and build upon that one certification. And again, it's female dominated. She at one point in time said in that, I really wish that more young women would get involved in the male-dominated trade offerings that we have here, like welding and heavy equipment. At which time I asked her, why do you think that is? And she said that last year there was one female student who actually was in the welding program, and she had told her how proud she was of her. I'm so glad that we got a young woman in here. I think it's amazing. We don't see many of you in here. And the young woman had told her she was surprised that she even made it that far. because her guidance counselor, and I do not know the school, I do not believe in the Central Square, I do not know either way where the student came from. Their guidance counselor told them, why would you want to be in Welding? It's dirty and it's full of boys. And maybe it was 2 weeks earlier, I was out with somebody, had dinner, and was having a conversation afterwards in my garage, and I was telling them that recently in the city of Syracuse, a sewer job had come up. And typically when a job comes out to bid, there are demands for your workforce. If you are the general contractor, a portion of your workforce has to be female or minority. And you also have subcontractors that has to be a portion female or minority. Typically those, it will vary depending on the city that you're in, but in the city of Syracuse, the subcontractor minority or female business enterprise requirement is 20%. It's under or at 20%. And your workforce, your actual staff that you have to have running the equipment or on the ground of female or minorities has been under 10%. In a recent contract in the city of Syracuse, they raised that requirement to 30%. 30% of the general contractor's staff has to be female or minority. Quite frankly, it doesn't exist. This population of trained staff being female or minority just doesn't exist. So first place bidder goes in at a $6 million price point, and third place bidder, we're going to skip right over second, comes in at $12 million, and third place bidder gets it $6 million on the backs of taxpayers, strictly because of the demand for female or minority workforce. And they said, yeah, we'll give it to you. Well, the reason there's a $12 million price tag, double what first place bidder was, is strictly because they're going to have to train. There's going to be delays, there's going to be major safety issues, because it doesn't exist. So my question to the board members that were sitting there with me, as I'm Central Square, there's one from every component district, was what do you see in your schools? What do you see in your districts? Do you hear these common themes where guidance counselors are possibly saying to these students, this is a male event, why would you want to do this? This is male dominated, this isn't for you. And the general reoccurring theme that came back is that we're just board members, we set policy, we don't run guidance departments. So I asked where we could start. Where can we start having this bigger conversation? And as Todd said, it begins here, it begins at city. We are going to start this initiative, and we're going to start going back and asking you guys to infiltrate, starting at your boards, and we'll find other ways, maybe guest speakers or mentors that can go in and start talking to districts. In my mind, what I wanted to bring to you all, because I do believe that I'm blessed to be in a district that is progressive as you are, I'm going to ask and not assume, do we have anything in place, kind of going along with what this gentleman said, in the way of mentors, whether it be paid or unpaid, where we can tell these young women, and I'm going to speak to women not to discredit minorities, but because I am a woman, and I'm a woman that works in this industry, do we have mentors in place in this district where young women, where we're taking these Zello exams and maybe seeing that their aptitude or inclination or interest at an early age is maybe aligned with that pathway? Do we offer them somebody to speak to by way of a parent? Because I do think that it could be difficult for a counselor or a teacher or a principal to try to talk not only the student into the potential of this pathway, but possibly their parents. I don't know that it necessarily ends with the closed-mindedness of the staff here, but rather the parents, the upper middle class parent who has a daughter who says, I want to be a heavy equipment operator. And do we have those people that know what a heavy equipment operator makes in Central New York today? It's $73 an hour if you run an excavator. It's $68 an hour if you run a loader. I know many women that work in this industry that would be willing to come in and speak to our students. So what we're calling an initiative, I'm just kind of bringing up to you guys now for the first time to say, kind of leading off of what Christy said last month to Chris when he was here, if we know that there is a program, or we know there is a demand, we would request, we would be one of the districts that would request a program. Well, the programs exist, and the demand for females and minorities